right. Great. Can you guys see my PowerPoint? Awesome. Great. Okay. So I am what's called the Paleontology Collections Manager. And what that is I'm kind of like the librarian, but for fossils. And I have three aspects of my job. I work in collections, so you can see me in the lower left-hand corner here, and I assign a number to every bone. I'm in charge of everything that comes into the collections room, which I'm in right now, which is very cool. I'll show you kind of where I am right now. Yeah, let me just do that right now. I have a really cool dinosaur behind me, and this is the collections room that I'm in. So there's just floor to ceiling shelves full of dinosaur bones, which is very exciting. And so I'm in charge of this room, which is awesome. And I have over 65,000 bones in here, most of them dinosaurs, which is really cool. And I'm in charge of everything that comes into this room and everything that leaves this room. So if it comes in, we go dig it out in the field when we're on our excavations, and we bring it back. And then if it goes on loan or on exhibit, I'm in charge of all of that movement of dinosaur bones, which is, I think it's so cool. So then I also go out in the field, which is one of my favorite parts of my job. And then I also do some research, which what I do is I actually cut open dinosaur bones and look at them under a microscope. And that's how we can actually tell whether a dinosaur is warm-blooded or cold-blooded, if it's a juvenile or if it's an adult. And you can tell that all by looking at the dinosaur bones under a microscope. So a little bit about what I do. What's a paleontologist? I told you a little bit. I'm the librarian for fossils. This is our collection space, which I just showed you. And we have a lot of fun in paleontology collections. And my favorite part of my job is going out in the field. I love the sense of discovery. I love going out in the field and finding a dinosaur bone, and I'm the first one to ever see that. That is such a cool sense of discovery. And I love being outside. I love camping. We're not staying in hotels. We are out in the desert. We are camping, and it is a lot of fun. This is a really cool dig that I was on in Utah near Moab. And we actually had to rock climb to get to the dinosaur quarry. And so we all got trained with harnesses on how to rock climb up the face of the wall. And so this is me climbing up to go excavate a sauropod, which is one of the long neck, long tail dinosaurs, the largest animals of all time. And so I love field work. A lot of what field work is looking at the ground, trying to see something weird, something interesting. And we're hiking all the time looking for dinosaur bones. And what we're looking for is a couple things. We're looking for color differences. Bones, when they fossilize, become different colors based on the minerals around the bones at the time it became fossilized. And so here you see the lower jaw of three different animals. At the top, we have a more modern horse, and then in the middle, we have a more of an ancient horse. And then we have Ceratosaurus, which is a meat-eating dinosaur from the Jurassic period, about 150 million years ago. And then at the bottom, we have a duck-billed dinosaur. And you can see all the teeth look different, all the jaws look different, but that color difference is important. And so we're looking for color differences. We're also looking for texture differences. Here you can see that the rock or the matrix that's around the bone is a different color than the bone itself. So the bone itself in this situation is a reddish brown color, so that color difference. And then also you can see the different textures. You can see the scratch marks that's gone through the sand at the time we were fossilized, or we were prepping it out. You can see individual sand grains that make up the sand. And then dinosaur bone has lots of tiny holes in it. Though that is because it had blood vessels running through the bone, and it made this very porous structure. Porous, kind of like a sponge. Porous means it has lots of holes in it. And so that's a texture difference we also look for as well. But that porosity actually brings us to the third way we tell something's a dinosaur bone or just a rock, is the lick and stick test. Dinosaur bone sticks to your tongue if you lick it because of that porosity. And so we look like a bunch of fools licking rocks, hoping that it sticks to our tongue. And if you're lucky, you have a dinosaur bone stuck to your tongue. And if you're unlucky, you have a mouthful of mud. So sense of discovery is very exciting. Here you can see a couple of those observations. We have a femur bone, which is the dark brown one that you can see, the big one. The femur goes from your hip to your knee. And then we have the humerus kind of in the foreground in the bottom part of the picture. And the humerus goes from your shoulder to your elbow. And we use a bunch of different tools when we decide to excavate a dinosaur. Here's my toolkit of the smaller tools that we use. I have a rock hammer here. I have a chisel and another larger hammer. Probably the most important tools I have in my toolkit is my GPS unit and my walkie-talkie. So I mark down all of the GPS units where I find the dinosaur bones. Like, oh, I found the coolest T-Rex of all times. I want to call my friends and tell them about it. I radio them on the walkie-talkie, and I can give them my coordinates, and they can come see the coolest find I've ever seen. Or if I get hurt, if a boulder falls on me or something like that, I can radio my GPS location out to other people. So those are my two most important tools that I have in my toolkit, followed closely by the rock hammer, which is good for excavating dinosaur bones, and also good if you're falling off a cliff, it'll slow you down. I also have glue. You can see we glue dinosaur bones back together in the field, but also we try to bring it back to the lab where it's a controlled environment where we can glue dinosaur bones back together. Then I have dental picks that the dentists aren't allowed to use on humans anymore, so I use them to clean up dinosaur teeth. I have, my Swiss Army knife, and then really important, my fork and my spoon, because I often eat leftovers when I'm out in the field, and it's kind of hard and gross to eat spaghetti with your hands. So that's really important too. We do use larger tools also. We use a pickaxe, you can see here. I also use shovels, larger hammers, whisk brooms, chisels. We have to excavate a big head wall. Sometimes it's not like the beginning of Jurassic Park where you're just scraping away the top of the surface and the dinosaur bones just laying there perfectly. Sometimes you have to take down a lot of rock to get to the bone layer. And so you can see here we had to excavate about 12 feet down in order to get to the bone layer. Sometimes it's even harder and we have to use really industrial tools. So this is a rock saw. And so this is like a construction crew tool that construction companies use to saw up concrete. And I have to use it sometimes when excavating dinosaur bones. We also have a huge jackhammer, which is also used in construction. So we have itty bitty tiny tools like dental picks, and then also large tools like this rock saw. What's really cool is when we actually get to ride in helicopters to get to our field sites. There's some areas in Utah that have never been seen by humans, and so probably has really good dinosaur hunting there. And so we actually get helicoptered into these places, which is awesome. We get excited because we're excited about the helicopters, and the helicopter pilots are excited about dinosaurs. So it's a really good symbiotic relationship. But on the left, you can see our gear for 2 weeks, 3 weeks being lowered into our campsite. And on the right, they're taking out the dinosaur bones that we have found that after those 2 weeks. There's me flying in a helicopter. My least favorite part of my job, I think, is emptying out the field toilet. You have to do it, and it's important, but it's not a fun job to do. With that, that was a quick overview of what I do as a paleontologist. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to show you, there you go. I'm going to show you where I am, because I am in the coolest room, I think, in the world. I'm gonna try to see how I show you. Okay, I can see at least myself. Okay, awesome. So I am in this paleontology collections room. The cool dinosaur behind me, as long as I don't trip over my chair, is named Diabloceratops. And so this is a ceratopsian dinosaur like Triceratops, so related to Triceratops, but there are so many different types of species that are related to Triceratops. And this is one of them. This is called Diabloceratops, Diablo meaning devil because of the horns on its head. We have a big nose, so it's looking right at you. This is the only one in the entire world, which is very exciting. This is 79 million years old, and it's found in Utah. So we have a big nose, that's a big parrot beak right here. We have the teeth that are still in life position, which never happens because that's one of the first things that's lost is their teeth when they start to degrade. We were talking about, Mrs. Hernandez was talking about the different holes in the skull. That's pretty cool. We have a big hole here, which is the eye hole or the orbit. And what I always think is kind of ironic is paleo artists always depict dinosaurs having really tiny eyes, but this is really big. This is like 4 inches long. I'd like to think of them with big googly eyes, you know, taking up the entire orbit there. So that's the eye hole, that's the nose hole. And it has a couple of other holes that help with the nasal passages. Then this hole is here, and it could either be for hearing, it could be its ear, or it could be for muscle attachment. These guys were herbivores, so they ate a lot of plants all the time. So they needed to have really good jaw muscles. And so this could be where the jaw muscles would attach. But what's really crazy is that hole is supposed to be there, but that hole is not supposed to be there. So it either got bit in the face by another dinosaur, or it had a bone disease or something. But this is the only one in the world, and we don't have the other side of the head, other side of the face. So that was very puzzling for scientists. And then we have another hole in the back of what's called the frill. And it's actually still up for debate on what these holes are for, these big ones in the back of the skull, whether it's for lightening or making a bone lighter of the skull, because these are really, really heavy heads. And this isn't even the biggest one we have here. Or it could have been for muscle attachment again, or it could have been for decoration, like a billboard, like, look how cool my skull is, come mate with me, kind of a thing. Or it could have been for thermoregulation or cooling themselves down. If they got really, really hot, they could pump blood up into their frill, the back of their skull, and face into the wind and have that cool themselves down. So anyway, there's still lots of hypotheses of what that could be used for. Then we have this other cool guy, another ceratopsian. They're my favorite. I love them. Here, down here. So this guy is called Cosmoceratops, and he is the best one in the world. Whenever National Geographic comes and visits us, they want me to forklift this one down because it's so pretty and so impressive. And you can again see an artist rendition of what it might have looked like in life. It had this amazing comb over, but those are bones, which is really neat. And again, you can see the nose, the jaw is actually in life position with the teeth in it. So that's really awesome. And then I got the eye. This guy had the most horns or ornamentation of any dinosaur ever. It has a horn over its nose, a horn over each eye, a horn out of each cheek, and a bunch of horns on the back of the skull. It is so cool and ornamented and awesome. So yeah, that's a lot of the cool things that are around me. These are the few of my favorite things, but I know there's probably a billion questions about paleontology that I would love to answer.
I can tell you a couple of them. The first one in the question answer is, how big is a T-Rex in feet?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It all depends on which species of Tyrannosaur, I guess you said T-Rex, and whether it's a baby or an adult. And so they got to be really, really big, man. I'd say about 20 feet, 25 feet, something like that, from the top of, or from the side of their face all the way to the tip of their tail, because they have so many bones that make up the whole skeleton. So it's pretty big. So I would think, you know, from tip to tail, you know, think about the size of a school bus. That's always a good comparison.
Oh, that helps me draw a picture in my head. If you think a school bus that can tip up and tip down, that is about the size of a T-Rex. Wow. Okay, here's a question from A. Fenner. What is your favorite spot to dig at?
Oh, that's a good one. I used to live in Chicago, but there are not as many dinosaurs there as there are in Utah. So I actually went to Utah to get my master's degree. And Utah is an amazing place for fossils. I love digging in Utah. If you looked at a geologic map of the state of Utah, it's very colorful, which basically every aged rock is exposed at the surface in Utah. And so we can today, you know, sitting here, I'm in Salt Lake City, and I could be like, what do I want to dig today? Do I want to dig a T-Rex? I just go 6 hours south and I can dig in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. If I'm like, ooh, I want to dig an Allosaurus today, I can go 2 hours to go to Vernal. I could go to Price, Utah. There's so many different places that have Jurassic age rocks exposed to the surface. If I wanted to dig up a mammoth, I don't have to go anywhere. In Salt Lake City, the aged rocks with the Pleistocene bones are right beneath our feet. Sometimes when they're excavating parking garages, they find mammoths, and it's amazing. So I love digging in Utah. I love digging in Grand Staircase, which is about 6 hours south of here, because there's still places that people haven't been. And so almost everything we find is a new species, which is exciting. And that's where we get to play with the helicopter. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, I'm writing these answers in as well. So how many bones or dinosaurs have you helped to find? So she's looking for like an amount here, like what kind of volume have you actually dug up and found in your digs?
That's a good question. There are a couple of ways to answer that, like in tonnage, like how many pounds of dinosaur bones have I dug up? I actually went on my first dig when I was 12, if you can believe that. I think I found thousands and thousands of dinosaur bones. And you can think of in a human, there's about 200 bones in a human. There's about 300 bones in a dinosaur. And a lot of times we find a lot of the bones. So thousands and thousands and hundreds of pounds. I can give you an idea of how big these dinosaurs are. I've dug up that one picture where it shows me climbing up the wall face. I was digging up a sauropod, and those are the long neck, long tail guys. People think of Brontosaurus, but that's not real. But like Barosaurus and Argentinosaurus and Seismosaurus, all the big sauruses are sauropods. And we have some of their femur bones right here. So it's a little hard to tell, but that's about 6 feet long. And that's just its femur. That goes from its hip to its knee. And that is of the largest dinosaur, one of the largest dinosaurs of all time. So if you think about that, I've dug up one of those, and it was really, really big.
Wow, that sounds so fun. So the next question, okay, so that was the how many. And now Kyle's asking, well, how long did it take you to get all the bones maybe like how long are you out on digs? And then maybe also how many years have you been doing this? That might kind of be 2 parts of this question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we usually dig from March until October every summer. We are out there a long time. We usually take April and June off because of the gnats. The gnats are awful bugs that we hate, and they don't make digging dinosaurs any fun. So, but we're out there for a long period of time. Sometimes it takes many years to excavate one dinosaur. It depends on access to helicopters. It depends on how hard the rock is to get it out. If we have to use jackhammers and rock saws all the time, that takes a long time to get it out. Yeah, and so sometimes it could take years to dig out one animal. And then you have to think, if we get it back to our lab here, and sometimes it takes years to prepare it in the lab and glue it back together. So it can take a long time, but that's nothing in geologic time. So.
And how old are T-Rexes? And I'm going to add to that. That's the question from the attendee. How old are T-Rexes? But are there different ages of dinosaurs?
Awesome. So there's 2 ways to answer that question, or that question can be asked in 2 ways. One of them is how long in the past did dinosaurs live from us? And so The dinosaurs started out around 300 million years old, and million years is really hard to think about, but there's 3 different time periods that had dinosaurs: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. And when dinosaurs first started out in the Triassic, they were tiny. They were bit players of their ecosystem, and the world was dominated by scary crocodile-looking animals. And then in the Jurassic, which is about 150 million years old, they got really big. That's where the long neck and long tail guys are. That's where Stegosaurus is, Allosaurus is, all those guys were in the Jurassic. And then in the Cretaceous, that's some of our favorites with the ceratopsian dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus rexes, the duck-billed dinosaurs. And then a catastrophic event happened about 65 million years ago when and I'm going to get it wrong, is an asteroid or a meteorite, I forget which one it is, when it's actively coming to the ground and then coming up. Yeah, and then asteroid, thank you. And then that actually blocked out the sun, and all the dinosaurs went extinct. So that's one way to answer it. So 65 million years ago was when the dinosaurs went extinct. And then how old are dinosaurs individually? Because that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because not a lot of people think about them as actual animals. How old was this specific animal when it died? And that's still a question that we're trying to figure out today. We do it by cutting open dinosaur bones and looking at it under a microscope. And how we do that is, if you've ever seen a tree stump that's cut down, you can count the rings to figure out how old the tree was when it was cut down. And it's the same thing with bones. You can actually count rings in bones, specifically in dinosaur bones, to figure out how old that individual dinosaur was when they died. And so at the moment, dinosaurs got to be about 30 years old. So that's kind of low. A lot of times people thought, man, they must have grown forever. If they're really, really big, maybe they're 150 years old, kind of a thing. But yeah, so we're thinking maybe they reached sexual maturity around 15 years old, and they died around 30, 35 years old. And when you said, do all dinosaurs grow at the same rate or live the same amount of length? Because we cut open so many dinosaur bones, we're actually able to make really cool, educated guesses that the herbivorous dinosaurs, or the ones that ate plants, actually grew faster than the carnivorous dinosaurs, the meat-eating dinosaurs that ate them, because their only defense mechanism was to grow as big as they could, as fast as they could. So.
The ones that got big fast are the ones that survived.
Yeah, that didn't get eaten.
That makes sense. Okay, we have a question from the chat. What suggestions do you have for us to go digging for bones? Now, you might be able to help because you were 12 when you went on your first dig and you lived here. So how did you get started so young?
Excellent. Yeah. I first got started in mammoths. So I went to a place called the Mammoth Site in Hot Springs, South Dakota, and they have a really cool dig partnership with Earthwatch. I'm not sure if they're still with Earthwatch right now, but they have a kind of pay to dig. You pay a price and you get to have an experience in order to dig mammoths, in that case mammoths. And there are a couple of them out there near Bartlett, in the suburbs of Chicago. There's the Field Museum, and then there's a Rockford Museum in the Burpee Museum in Rockford, and they all have lots of pay to dig or field trips or experiences like that. So I would definitely go through that. It gets a little lots of rules when it comes to permissions to dig dinosaurs. Like if you find a fossil or a dinosaur in your backyard, you're allowed to keep it. You own that land, hooray. But it all depends on who owns the land, especially when you come out west. And so you definitely want to make sure you have permission to dig where whoever owns the land. So don't just get a shovel and start walking around. You should pay attention to whose land you're on.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I have 2 questions that are related. What were some animals that evolved from dinosaurs, and are today's birds dinosaurs?
Yes, absolutely. So we have lots of evidence to support that dinosaurs evolved into birds. And so we say dinosaurs went extinct, But did they? The terrestrial dinosaurs that lived on the land, they went extinct, and all the lots of the big marine reptiles that lived in the ocean, a lot of them went extinct. But a lot of so the dinosaurs that are called theropods, which are just the meat-eating dinosaurs that walked on two legs, they're the ones, their line actually evolved into birds. And so if you use your imagination and you take a T-Rex, what you think of a T-Rex, and you give it a beak instead of teeth, and you give it wings instead of the claws, then, and lots of feathers, then you can be like, oh yeah, that's just a gigantic pigeon, and that's pretty scary. Or likewise, if you look at a pigeon and you're like, okay, well, if I make it really, really big and I give it teeth and I give it claws, oh man, then that's a very scary dinosaur. So it's really very cool that they evolved that way. And we've actually found fossils, like a really cool one called Archaeopteryx that has both the characteristics of dinosaurs and of birds. It has sharp teeth and sharp claws, which you think dinosaur, and then it has lots and lots of feathers. So you're like, bird. And so it had both of the characteristics of both dinosaurs and birds. So next time you see a pigeon or a magpie, know that it is a descendant of a dinosaur.
Interesting. And I see a question in the chat. Can she tell us more about warm-blooded dinosaurs? I didn't know there were warm-blooded dinosaurs.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, for the longest time, people thought dinosaurs were cold-blooded. And it's again, trying to talk about the scientific process where we know that dinosaurs evolved into birds, which are warm-blooded, and they have the same ancestor, the same common ancestor to crocodiles and alligators, which are cold-blooded. So that's those two outliers, the two end, how do we figure out the stuff of the dinosaurs? And so it's the same thing if you cut open dinosaur bones and look at them under a microscope. If you, what you can tell is if it has a lot of holes, which means it has a lot of blood vessels running through it, is more likely warm-blooded. And if it had fewer of those holes running through it, it's more likely cold-blooded. And so we've done that for lots and lots of dinosaurs, and we can actually tell that the majority of the dinosaurs were warm-blooded. Instead of being sluggish creatures with their tail dragging behind them, they moved very fast, and they were predators, and they chased down their prey, and they were active, had active lifestyles, and we have science to support that.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know about that either, but yeah, a dinosaur that's going to be a predator is going to have to be swift on his feet. And when I think, for example, of a gecko, they do seem kind of sluggish compared to something that would need to be faster. So interesting. Okay, two fast ones. What was your last dinosaur you dug up? Maybe what was your last piece of a dinosaur that you dug up? Do you remember?
Oh man, yeah, because it's been a while since I've been on the field because of COVID. I was on, my last dinosaur dig was in March of 2020, and we were digging in the Triassic, so that's 215 million years old. And I was digging an animal called Coelophysis, and so it was a tiny dinosaur, tiny in comparison. Still would have been pretty big. So that more like a golden retriever size dinosaur, and meat eater, so it had sharp teeth in it. And I found I think I found the claw. I found a toe claw of a Coelophysis. That was the last dig I was on.
I think that's impressive that you can say the last thing I dug up was a Coelophysis. Kind of rolls off the tongue nicely.
Yep.
What's your favorite dinosaur? I don't know if you can answer that. That's like asking me my favorite constellation.
Yeah, but there is an answer. My favorite family of dinosaurs is, of course, the ceratopsians. My favorite ceratopsian is called Utahceratops, and I have him right there. So again, another ceratopsian dinosaur. It's huge. It's hard to see. It's 6 feet long, and that's just the skull. This guy was gigantic. Plant eater. Again, when Mrs. Hernandez was talking about the different what the holes do in a skull. You can see those holes are huge. And so again, we kind of think that they are walking billboards with these huge, huge skulls. But I love Utahceratops because I also don't think that the herbivorous dinosaurs get enough attention. It's always T-Rex, 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 which is also very cool. And this is only found in Utah so far. And as part of my master's thesis, I cut open a lot of Utahceratops's bones, so I feel like I know them very well. While I've shown you 3 of the ceratopsian dinosaurs, I do have another one. Right here, that's Nasutoceratops. So you can see we have evidence right here that there are 4 different species of ceratopsian dinosaurs, and they all look very different. You can see this is not 6 feet long, and the holes are circular, and it has those horns, those orbital horns that are pointing straight forward, and I think that's pretty cool. So I think Utahceratops is my favorite. I also get, if I had a pet as a dinosaur, which one it would be. And also ceratopsian, but it's called Psittacosaurus, which would have been the size of a golden retriever. And it had quills on its back like a porcupine. And I just think that they're adorable.
Interesting, quills. And we have animals today that have quills. That's pretty cool. So here's a simple numbers question. I don't know if you know it off the top of your head. How many dinosaur species were there?
Oh man, it changes every day and we still don't know the answer. There are so many different ages rocked that are not exposed at the surface, that are beneath layers and layers and layers of mammoths, for example. And so we have no idea. We're literally scratching the surface of how many dinosaurs there are. Just thinking about ceratopsian dinosaurs, I have this cool poster in my office which just shows the diversity of ceratopsian dinosaurs, and I think there are about 50 different ceratopsian dinosaurs, and that was like 10 years ago. So every day a new species of dinosaur is named, and those are just the ones that we are lucky enough to find. So I'm going to cop out on that one, but thousands of dinosaur species.
Yeah, I think that, and that your specialty is the ceratopsian. So that's the one you would know the numbers of. And just ceratopsians, there's over 50 different types. So I think the answer is a lot. That's
a lot.
And then I think you answered this. I think it might be the same person. How many no, maybe not. How many dinosaurs have you dug up?
Yes, lots. Types of dinosaurs, I'll answer that differently. Probably 40 different types of dinosaurs, but like thousands of individual bones. But you got to think there's lots of individual bones in a skeleton.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you heard of La Brea tar pits?
Oh, I have.
Of course.
I actually have a cabinet full of La Brea tar pits fossils here. And what's crazy is when I open the cabinet, I get this huge sense of smell of tar. It smells like asphalt, like there's a construction crew in here. And I have a saber-toothed cat, a dire wolf, and actually a bunch of beetles. Invertebrate beetles that have been trapped in tar in my collection here. La Brea tar pits is awesome, and if you're ever in Los Angeles, I definitely recommend going.
Wow. All right, so in the chat, it looks like we're down to just Jesus wants to know what was the biggest dinosaur. I wonder if that's a loaded question too, because you could talk heavy, you could talk tall, you could talk wide. I guess it depends on what you mean when you say biggest, but let's go with maybe heaviest. What's the heaviest?
Yeah, so it's again the sauropods with the long neck and long tail. There's a family called the Titanosaurs. These guys have great names: Titanosaurus, Seismosaurus, Gigantosaurus. They're all gigantic names. I think that Argentinosaurus is the heaviest in terms of it weighs the most, and I think Seismosaurus might be the longest. But again, it changes every day. So.
Okay, wow. And Sophia, one last question. It says, how much dinosaurs do you think there were? And I think you kind of mentioned that there were
so many
and thousands and thousands and thousands of dinosaurs.
Yeah, at different times. And that's kind of interesting to think about the ecosystem and how these dinosaurs related to each other. You know, I just showed you 4 large ceratopsian dinosaurs, so think rhinoceros size, but then they were all competing for the same plants to eat. They were trying to compete, within each other for mates and for the different land that they were on and territories and stuff like that, and thinking about the whole world being covered in dinosaurs. There were thousands, millions, and billions of dinosaurs for sure.
Wow, that is just amazing. And we do talk about that asteroid that hit 65 million years ago and how there's so much evidence in the rock of planet Earth and in the crater, that Chicxulub crater down in the Gulf of Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. And if you're a paleontologist or a geologist, you can dig and you can find the evidence that makes sense with the whole asteroid thing. It's pretty amazing. And we're close to the end of our time. And I want to thank you for sharing your amazing knowledge. Just the experience that you have in doing all this is so cool for kids to be able to ask questions and learn a little bit more about the field of paleontology, and that there really are dinosaur specialists that spend their entire career just learning about dinosaurs. And I have a feeling you're going to go past your career, and after you retire, you're still going to love looking for your dinosaurs on your own time, just because it's a passion of yours. And I just appreciate your time. So
absolutely, my pleasure.
Any last questions here? No. Oh, there. Can we do one more question? It's a good one.
Yeah.
How do they name dinosaurs? How do they name when they have a new find?
That's a good one. So there's a rule: you can't name it after yourself, unfortunately. Otherwise, there'd be lots of Carrie-sauruses around here. So you can't name it after yourself. You usually name it using describing words, describing some of the character traits. Like, for example, Diabloceratops. They figured that Diablo means devil. It has the horns like a devil. And also they lit it on fire when they excavated it. So adds to the lore of Diabloceratops. And then ceratops, meaning horn face, so it has a face with horns. And then the species name is Eatoni. So it was named after Jeff Eaton, who discovered lots and lots of fossils in Utah. And so you can't name it after yourself, but you can name it after somebody else. And that genus name is usually either Latin or Greek in the preface. Diablo, obviously Spanish, but there's kind of like a numbering, a way to name things based on the different. I don't know why they use Greek and Latin, but that's usually what they do.
Yeah, just like we do for animals. What fun that must be in the brainstorming session of the group of scientists that are part of the discovery team to figure out what they want to call it. That's pretty neat. Okay, well, thank you for your time. And Mrs. McMullen, do you want to add anything here? And we'll
just that thank you so much. And there's a lot of comments in the chat. Maybe we'll have to send some of those to you, of just people thanking you so much for your time and how exciting it was. I guess I have one question. I'm trying not to get choked up. It's so cool that you are a U46 kid. So what words of advice would you have for the U46 kids?
Oh man, yeah. Well, U46 is an awesome district to be a part of. I actually have two of my former teachers here, Mrs. Valencia and Mrs. Hernandez, and having good mentors and good teachers is just such a lucky thing to have. If you're interested in science, join science clubs. I would. There's always like friends of or members of like the Field Museum or the Rockford Museum. Like, get involved if you can volunteer in any of these places, at zoos, local geology or rock clubs, that kind of a thing. Science fairs, STEM expos. I mean, anything to get your hand in science and research experience is always really important. And study hard in science and history, and study hard in everything, but science and history are the cool ones. And then, just getting as much experience as you can. Usually in different science disciplines, there's lots of different clubs, like higher clubs, like I belong to the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, for example, and you don't have to be a professional paleontologist to attend those conferences. You can go and hear all of the cutting edge, pun intended, research of paleontology. And so getting involved that way is definitely recommended.
Wow, excellent advice. I'll bet you there's a lot of young aspiring paleontologists that go to those types of conferences. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was so good to see you.
I mean, you're welcome to stay, but I'm going to switch back to the screen that I was sharing of the slide deck so we can answer questions specifically now about the Science STEM Expo that's coming up. And in this slide deck that we have in the chat that you can click on and make a copy of for yourself, we have some links to pieces that will help you work through getting your project started, working on it and getting it done. Sometimes the hardest part is getting started. And we have these two links here. We have a pre-recorded or a presentation, a virtual presentation template, and we have an in-person board template. Let me show you that one here. And it's just a Google Doc, but it tells you about how you can create your board and get all the questions answered that we want you to answer to do your project. You don't have to do an experiment. It could be something you're interested in. Maybe you're crazy about dinosaurs and something that Mrs. Bussian just told you really piqued your interest. You could do some kind of an observational or a research project. You could find different ways to connect your learning to structure and function. And I learned today that some of those holes in the head of the T-Rex might be there because if it was all bone, it would be really heavy. And if it was a little bit holey, it would still be strong, but not as heavy for the dinosaur to have to carry around this gigantic, super heavy head, and that they had pretty big eyes. So they need a big eye socket. Those are things that I could add to my board and I could connect to structure and function to answer the questions. And if you can answer these questions on your board, you have a completed project. And you have something that a judge that we're calling a peer reviewer or a helper can come up and ask you about, and you can answer those questions. And if you prefer, you can use this template. You can use this Google slide deck that we have available for you to copy. We can put it in the chat, and anything that's in the blue is clickable, and you just replace it with your words, like the title of your project and your name, and then this tells you what to do. So you would click like that you're going to list your phenomenon. Mine was, why are there so many dinosaurs are amazing and cool, but they have a lot of holes in their head. And then what is my question? Well, in the next page, I would, in this blue part here, I would answer what my question was. I would say, what's my question? And it walks you through the steps to make a STEM Expo project. You don't have to add anything else. You don't have to find somebody on the internet that did a science fair experiment like yours and have what they did, because this isn't a science fair experiment, it's a STEM Expo. And can one of you guys make sure that this template gets in the chat? Because I don't think I put it.
Sure. I'm loading it right now.
And then something we haven't shown you yet here is a sample schedule. If you're going to do in person, hopefully we'll be able to do in person. That's the hope here. And you'd set up somewhere between 8 and 8:45. The doors will open to the public at 9. You know, your parents, your grandma, your grandpa, your aunts, your uncles, your neighbors could come and walk through and look at the projects. From 9 to 11, you stand by your project and you tell people about your project. You answer their questions. And during that time, the official judges or mentors will come by and ask you questions and give you feedback. And then 11 o'clock, you start cleaning up and then you're excused. We're going to have a second group that's going to come in after that. These times are not exact for sure at the moment, but it'll be a roughly 2-hour event if you do it in person, plus, half an hour for cleanup and setup. You'll get a board once you register and sign up. You can design your board however you'd like. There's a click button here again to get that template for the in-person presentation board. Somehow that got out of order. And if you do a Zoom, if you want to do this virtually, you'll sign up for a time slot to do your presentation. You'll go into a Zoom webinar, just log in. And when we find your name, we will upload, make you a panelist so that you can share your screen. And all you need to share is your template, the one I just showed you. This just needs to be filled out. You could just open up your Zoom slide deck and go through each page and tell us the answers on each page. Be prepared to answer some questions on it. You'll have about 10 minutes to do your presentation. The judges will have about 10 minutes to talk to you and ask questions. And then by 9:30, you're done with your presentation and you'll be moved back as an attendee. And of course, you can stay and watch everybody else's presentations too. You just won't be a panelist anymore where they can see your face and you can share your screen. The end of the slide deck, there's a hot link right here. You can click on it and you will get to the registration Google form. And what kind of questions do we have? I'm going to stop sharing because this will probably be all of us answering questions here. Oh, they're dinosaur questions. I am no dinosaur expert. Oh, that is a good question. A. Fenner, what's the most rare dinosaur in the world? Well, at the beginning, she showed us that one Ceratops that she said there's only one in the whole world. So I guess that would be pretty rare. That's probably the answer to that one. And I don't see any other questions in the chat at the moment. Does anybody have questions about the STEM Expo, how to set it up, how to access the information, how to get started?
If you're considering doing the virtual format, we will have, we're going to have Mr. Deshawn with us again this year. And so he'll be doing tech checks, making sure that you're all set. He'll make appointments with you and your family and myself, and we'll run you through just to make sure that you can do the presentation. You know how to use everything. Make sure if you've got video, we'll make sure that's working. And there'll be a green room, just similar to last year, where you'll check into the green room. We'll make sure everything's working, and then he'll transfer you over to the actual presentation room. So we've got lots of people to help make sure that the virtual event runs smoothly again this year, just so you, in case you were with us last year and you know how that runs.
I think last year with our doing the virtual, it was a little hard for students to sometimes know what to present. And I think the template on the slide deck is super helpful for that, because you just kind of answer the questions and your answers show us how you're thinking like a scientist. And we just want to see evidence that you're thinking like a scientist. And it kind of prevents you from going off in a direction where you don't need to share. Like that type of information doesn't need to be included. It kind of helps keep you focused on just the STEM Expo project itself. And it looks like we got the registration link in there. Thank you. We've got the presentation information. We've got the template. It's all in the chat right now. And it's also all available on the U46 STEM Expo site. I'm going to share one last time, show everyone what that looks like. If you go to the U46 school district website and you go to departments, you can get to if you just Google U46 STEM Expo 2022, this is the link, this is the exact page that comes up. And registration is on here. There's an example of a graphic organizer to help you organize your thinking to get started. Yeah, there's links on here. All the information that you might need is here. And there's also information, our emails, are they on here? It's not hard to find.
I think we're on the front page, our emails, or that Office of K-12 Science tab.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. This one here. That was what we posted on there today, but it's on the science department page. It's not hard to find our emails, and you can email any one of us if you have questions. Any of the attendees have questions? about the STEM.
There's a planetarium question for you that just came in.
Oh, may I ask what planet is the furthest from the Earth or the Milky Way that we know of? That question is not, those are two separate questions. If you want to know what planet is furthest from Earth, that's a tricky question, but I can answer it. And if you mean in our own solar system, well, then the farthest planet would be Neptune that we know of. But if you're talking about the farthest from us in the whole Milky Way, well, scientists have found about 5,000 stars that have planets going around them. I don't know the name of the star that's the farthest of those 5,000 that they found, but there are stars in the Milky Way that have planets going around them. They're called exoplanets. So yeah, good question.
And Kyle, you know, you don't have to have anything fancy. If you're interested in that, that's observational science, and that's a STEM project that you can do. There are different programs that you can use to help you with that. I'll put the one that Mrs. Hernandez uses in the chat for you, but that's a project that you could do.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you weren't here for the last two kickoff events, I did star shows, and the last slide in the deck from last week, it's a whole page of ideas for astronomy STEM Expo projects based on observing. And what you observe, you can write about it. You can make a graph or a chart or a diagram. You can label it. You can put them all in order. You can do it every night at the same time. You can do it every day at the same time. You can do it once a week. It depends on what you're looking for and what phenomenon you're trying to investigate, but you could definitely do an observing project for the STEM Expo if astronomy is something you're interested in. All right, we're at our time. It's 7:02. I don't want to take up any extra time, and everybody had 6 to 7 set aside for this. Thank every one of you for coming and for asking questions. And I sure hope to see you all at the STEM Expo.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. We appreciate it very much. And thanks, U46 Science. You guys did a really good job again.
No problem. It was fun. Have a good night.
Bye.